of the Leaders of Transformation podcast, the number one show for entrepreneurs and business owners who want to make a greater impact in the world and uplift others in the process. Now, I'm your host, Nicole Jansen, and you can join me live every Tuesday as we bring on another amazing guest and we talk about making a difference in the world, making a difference in business, making a difference in our local community, the world at large. And we talk to difference makers and world changers, specifically about leadership, about business, about societal transformation, mindset, and even just understanding their own experience and how you can apply that in your own life in becoming the difference maker and the world changer that you're capable of being. Now, this show is actually brought to you by my coaching and training company, and that's Leaders of Transformation. And if you're a leader or you're an aspiring leader who wants to break through that ceiling of success, maybe you're successful, but you're unfulfilled and you're like, there's got to be more to life, then what I would encourage you to do is go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching, and you can schedule a free consult with me. We'll go through the subconscious beliefs that you might have that are holding you back from experiencing the happiness and the success that you're looking for. We'll also explore your goals and objectives and what it is that it's going to be necessary for you to take you to the next level and to truly, as I say, become the leader of transformation that you are capable of being. So go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching. Now, that's just for those of you that are serious about making a difference, okay? Because I like to get into it. It's going to be hugely valuable. It's not a sales pitch. We're going to get into the real nitty gritty of what's working, what's not working, and what's going to take to move forward. So if that's of interest to you, I look forward to talking with you and exploring the possibilities there. Now, our topic today is career changes that matter. How do you know when it's time to make a career change? Well, our guest today is Barb Garrison, and let me bring her on here. Barb Garrison is a career and money breakthrough coach at Internal Groove. She helps burned out, success-driven professionals who are just going through the motions design a career that makes them leap out of bed, even on Monday mornings. And after 18 years in marketing and surviving corporate burnout herself, she combines her degrees in psychology and mass communications, plus 3 professional coaching certifications to support corporate executives and entrepreneurs to move from self-doubt, burned out, to relief and freedom. So Barb, welcome to Leaders Transformation. We're excited to have you here today.
Oh, thanks, Nicole. I'm so glad to be here. It's an honor.
Well, it's always great to have fellow coaches on the show because we can really get into the nitty gritty of it and what is underneath the surface. So this show is about transformation, and transformation, as you know, is not about just making a couple of alterations. It's about actually taking something. It's like the caterpillar to the butterfly. It is literally busting through and transforming something into something, completely new. And so with that in mind, we're going to talk about career, transitions here. And I'm excited about that because I know there's a lot of people that are creating that are experiencing that change right now in their careers, or they're feeling that unsettledness, especially 2020 and into 2021, people are feeling a certain measure of unrest. And so I'm curious, a little bit of backstory from you is, why is this so near and dear to your heart? Because this isn't new to you. You've been doing this for a number of years. So maybe give us a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I have been doing this actually nearly 15 years. I started my company called Internal Groove back then, and I was my first, most difficult, most challenging, most stubborn, most not listening client I've ever worked with. So I actually was really, my first transformation was really myself. I had a corporate job that, by all success measures, my resume, my title, my salary, my business card, the context I had, the exposure I had, it was a large public company. I was number 2 at a LA based company. Well, it was really based in the Midwest, but our local area there. And I mean, I got to be involved in marketing and politics and public relations and sales and tourism. And I mean, it was really, and then because of where it was located in Hollywood, right at the corner of Hollywood and Beverly Hills, I really got involved in a lot of really interesting things, the so-called, high glamour stuff that, was great and fun. And it was a great job. There was nothing wrong with the job. But I got to a point where I literally felt like my soul was leaking out of me. I was working 6 and 7 days a week, and I was doing well in the position. I'd worked my whole career to get there, but I found myself just sort of like having this itch I couldn't scratch. And that was combined with the fact that I was starting to have a lot of symptoms of stress, like health symptoms of stress. And, rashes that were unexplained, and, bronchitis that wouldn't go away. I lost my voice. That was really the linchpin. I lost my voice after 3 rounds of antibiotics. My voice wouldn't come back. And I thought, this isn't an accident. There's something going on here about losing my voice. And, at the time, it was very painful and very difficult. And I had no idea really where to start, where to go, what to do, where to get help. This now was like 16 and a half years ago. And back then, coaching really didn't exist in the form that it does today. And certainly not the style of coaching that I do, which is really a combination of what I call outer work and inner work. Certainly there's external changes to make, decisions to make, things to do research on, communication styles to work on, leadership skills to build. But our business cannot expand unless we are personally deeply willing to expand ourselves. And I was really at a crossroads there where I really needed to look at, what was my part in being miserable? And what I finally really discovered is I was playing a role that I was supposed to be playing and not really fully living my truth. And I was pretty good at it. One of my colleagues used to say to me, I was really good at holding the Kool-Aid in my mouth, not spitting it out and not swallowing it, but just smiling while I was holding it in my mouth. So, I ended up quitting without another job when my health really took a nosedive. My doctor basically said, I'm putting you in the hospital because you're not going back. And I ultimately didn't have to go in the hospital, luckily, but it was pretty serious. And HR did me a huge favor because while I was home so sick with a doctor's note, I got a knock on the door after sleeping 3 straight days with a certified letter saying I was being defiant. And I thought, wow, I've given 6 or 7 days a week of my life to this place for years. And now I'm ill and I lost my voice and I need to get well. And they did me a huge favor, really. It was really a hidden gift because it clarified for me really where their priorities were and where my priorities were. And it really worked out. Now I got better and I went back to work and I really thought long and hard about it. But this is when I really began my deeper self-discovery process. And about 3 months later, I guess it was like a month and a half later. It seemed like it, 3 years in my mind. A month and a half later, I gave my notice and people were pretty surprised, especially since I quit without another job, which is not something I generally recommend. Luckily, I had planned for it financially. So that is actually a tip I have for your listeners, which is always have a freedom fund. I call it a freedom fund. Doesn't matter whether you love your job. You want to have a bank account that's a savings account that you automatically take a piece of your paycheck every month and just have the automatic debit go right through without you even thinking about it. If all you can do right now is $25 a month, then start with that. Give up a couple of lattes, If you can do more, do more. And you don't have to decide now what that freedom is for, and it doesn't have to be just for leaving your job. But when you have that freedom fund, it gives you choices in all kinds of different parts of your life that you may not know that you're going to need at some point.
Well, I think of your story, and I mean, it's pretty extreme what you experienced, like literally getting sick and having to be at home and then getting that certified letter. I think that's, I mean, it's sad actually that companies do that. And I think there's a lot of people that can relate to it, whether it is that maybe they got sick or maybe they just know like every morning they're dreading going to work. I mean, we're not meant to dread. I mean, we spend so much of our time working, so much of our time in the workplace that we ought to enjoy it. And so it's sad because you hear the numbers, and it used to be like 65% hate their jobs, and now it's that number is actually higher, of people that really resent what they're doing. And it's a shame because also the company doesn't get the most out of the people, because when you're feeling like that, you're not bringing your best to the work that you do. And so both parties lose. And so sometimes it is like you said, it is a blessing. It is a gift because it caused you to take a step that you may not have done, and maybe not done right away. And that becomes a gift. And so for our listeners, even just encouraging you to look at those setbacks or those disappointments or those rejections as a gift, because that might be just the clue and the hint that you need, the nudge to take it to that next level of saying, you know what, this isn't where I want to be. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about their new career and situation that they're dealing with there. And she's very clear. She's like, look, I came because I want to do X, Y, and Z. If I can do it here, great. If not, I'm going to go find somewhere else. Because she's like, she's about our age, somewhere in that range of 29 and holding, and and uh, and she's like, I don't have time to waste. Like, I'm not
Yep.
going to stay in an environment where I'm not valued and can't do what I want to do. So in it fully, so can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges, maybe the mistakes that people often make in their career, that maybe they wait too long, or I don't know, some things that maybe you can help our listeners to self-identify that this
Yeah.
might be an area that they need to really start to look at.
Definitely. The first thing is, most people think their problems are outside themselves. It's their boss, it's the company, it's their paycheck, the size of their paycheck, it's their lack of title that they want. And the truth is that in my experience, that external stuff is only about 20% of the equation. I find the other 80% is really what I call the how, or how we bring ourselves to what we do. And so some of that is our mindset. Some of that is what I would call our self-management strategies, or lack thereof. This includes things like patterns and habits that we've had for a very long time that we've used to survive. It's not something we're doing wrong, but some of these old habits, like excessive expectations of both ourselves and others, that have us, seeking perfection, that really burns ourselves out and burns our team out, or others we work with, coworkers. Things like excessive worry about things you can't control that are outside of yourself. And I could go on the list of career pitfalls around some of those things. I mean, I see a lot of comparison. That is a huge career pitfall, comparing yourself to where someone else is. Well, we all have our own journey, and I recommend that everybody immediately put on what I call the blinders, what the horses do when they're running their race. It's like, run your own race. Don't worry about what everybody else is or isn't doing, because we all have a different journey, and there's different things that we're meant to learn. There's different places we're meant to grow, and different places where we're meant to take a sharp left turn or a sharp right turn, or stay where we are a little bit longer, and something is going to move that we didn't control. All of a sudden it pops up and we're like, oh, we didn't even know this was a possibility. And so, I think also that even if you don't like your job, there's a lot that you can do to improve the job that you have. Yes, you can't control people around you, but you can look at yourself. And what I find is, so many people are existing in a place of burnout that it doesn't even matter. If they had a job they loved, they'd still be resentful and exhausted, because they're not taking care of themselves first. And we've been conditioned, and I'm going to be a little gender biased here, but I think women in particular have a harder time with this. We're conditioned that it's our job to take care of everybody else, and then we'll take the crumbs that are left over. Like, if there's a little time at the end of the day, maybe I'll, take a bath for 5 minutes, but nope, I don't have time for that. So now I got to get ready for tomorrow and whatever. And, this takes a toll, and it's a big toll on our health, on our life, on our relationships, whether they're personal relationships or business relationships. So, I think that the first step really for everyone is really to do some self-reflection. It sounds a little like woo-woo, I guess you could say, but the point is that you know what's in your heart. You know what's best. And when you're running on adrenaline and you're just pushing, 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 and you're crabby, all you really know is it's not working. But you have to slow down and listen to yourself to know what's not working. Like in my example, there was a lot of aspects of my job that I really liked. And it took me a long time to figure out what about it wasn't working. And what I realized is I had put on the back burner a big piece of who I am. And I was really just focusing on a narrow road of where I had strength and skills. But there was all these other things that were sort of waiting for someday. And someday is not the month after December. And, it was interesting because the timing that occurred, I don't want to say I picked it, but the timing that occurred was really tricky for me. I was newly married. I'd gotten married later in life, and we had just bought a brand new condo. And the financial choices of that were definitely not easy. Definitely not easy. But it was like, is it my life or my livelihood? And I will be honest with you, I really believe I saved my life by doing that, what I did, when I did it, and how I did it. And I don't mean to be melodramatic, but I really think it allowed me to really change the trajectory of my life. I mean, now in my life, I don't have stress. Like, I've designed my life so that there is no stress. And, of course, things like the pandemic impact all of us, me included, because I was a COVID long hauler. So, I've had stress around that, but not around my work. In fact, my business has helped me get through some of the tough times related to the pandemic because I love it so much. And I love it because it reflects who I truly am.
Well, you talk about self-reflection. I mean, I think self-reflection is actually one of the most important qualities of a leader, because if we don't have self-awareness, how can we possibly improve? How can we possibly impact others and help them as well? So I think it does start there. And you gave us some great tips in terms of even recognizing, like you said, some of the pitfalls, some of the barriers that we have that we don't even realize, the things that we do are on autopilot. And reminds me of someone else that I had on my show a number of years back, Linus Woods Mullins, and I think she was about 40, late 40s, and she was feeling so unsettled. She was in HR, and she got to the point where she was like literally sick and just tired of her career.
Sick and tired.
That's right.
Sick and tired of.
Exactly. And so she decided that this wasn't what she wanted to do anymore. And she was also in the position where she could step back and then figure out what she was going to do, which she did. And she started her business at 51. Now she's in her mid 60s, and she is rocking it. I mean, she is doing so well. She loves it. She's got a huge following online, and she teaches wellness to women over 40, and she looks fabulous. Like, I wish that I looked like that, and she's a lot older than me. But, it's just amazing what happens when we make that pivot and change. In what you're talking about is that's the fruition of it. Now, there are some, though, that find themselves in a position where they cannot just leave and figure it out. And there's also those people that have no idea what else they would do. They know they're unsatisfied. And what do I do with that? Like, what do I do now? And partially, I think it's because those patterns and habits, like you're talking about, that they get us so ingrained, so entrenched in a certain pattern of thinking that we can't actually see anything else. We just know that it's not comfortable. So how about those people? What do they do to start getting unstuck and start getting clarity on their next steps forward?
So I'm going to speak about those two situations a little bit differently. First of all, I get it. We all have to pay the bills. I was the primary breadwinner at the time that we had our brand new condo. And so I get it. It wasn't easy and it wasn't comfortable, but I took myself through this exercise. This is funny. People can try this. I would want to buy something or something that I thought I needed at the time when I was thinking about quitting my job. And I would pick the thing up, whatever it was. I definitely used to like to shop and things like that. And I'd pick the thing up and I would literally calculate how many hours, and I wasn't paid by the hour, I was salaried, but I would roughly estimate how many days of my life would be required for this thing versus actually owning this or being in the job that was sucking the soul out of me. And every single time I put it down. Every single time I put it down. And I did this with everything from like how much I paid to park my car. Could I walk a little farther? How much was this thing I needed? How often did I need to order something? How often did we need to, get a new couch now? Whatever it was. And everybody has a different level. And I know a lot of people are really challenged right now. But I also want to remind people that leaving is not the only solution. Staying, you can also transform the job you have and make it better. You can look at yourself and the portion that you're playing in this. What are the habits? Are you dealing with procrastination habits? Are you dealing with agitation? Are you dealing with communication challenges with your team and you're not stepping up and setting good boundaries or making requests clearly? Do you have a challenged relationship with your supervisor? Do you need to have a lay it out on the table and let's talk about where we are? Some of these choices are scary. There's no question. I work with clients all day long, every day of the week, that run into some of these things. And this is one of the things I help them do to prepare for. They can all be had. They can all be done. They can all be done with what I call grace and style. And we assume that, my company doesn't negotiate positions. Like you're in a box and that's all it is. I can tell you, for every single person that's come to me and said, I have to leave because I have no choice. We have renegotiated, job descriptions. We've renegotiated salaries. We've renegotiated schedules. We've renegotiated even putting someone in a split department so they could work part-time in one department and one in another. Because one of the things I find that people ignore, and this was what I found in my case, when we're high achievers, which is most of who I work with, boredom is a huge, huge problem. When we stop growing and learning, now our brain has all kinds of extra bandwidth to get involved in things that aren't our business, things that are office gossip, or things that just are nitpicky and not important. And really, it's because we're bored, because we're kind of doing the job and we've gotten good at it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's really time to consider leaving. You asked me that a little bit earlier. I call these concrete boots. If you stay somewhere when you're bored for more than an extra year, you really start to develop concrete boots. And what happens is then it makes it harder and harder and harder to leave. And then you wake up and you've been there 10, 12 years, and now it's really hard to leave. So this is not a recommendation. It's more what I observe, which is I find concrete boots tend to start growing after about 6 years. This is not a hard and fast rule, but I see it a lot. It's happened in my life. Like that was my cycle every 5 to 6 years. Even if you really like your job, something new has to come in, and it doesn't always have to be a promotion, but something has to shift. Take on new projects, ask for some new responsibilities or ask for less responsibilities. Negotiate to hire an assistant if you're overloaded. Look for job sharing opportunities. I mean, we can be super creative and not have to leave. And, I was really, I don't know where my intuition came in exactly, but I was saving a lot of money while I was working because I knew a change was coming. I didn't know what it was or what it would look like. So I started saving a lot of my paycheck. And I shouldn't say that because I still had a lot of expenses, but it was a big enough chunk that by doing that for a year or more, it gave me some elbow room, it gave me that little bit of freedom. So I definitely recommend people do that. Consider internal discussions and dialogues for sure. And recognize that time to figure out where you're miserable is so important. It's so important. There is no substitute for it. No substitute. And so you need to look at what is causing that unrest. What is it? And it's not an easy answer. It doesn't come fast. Ask for help if you need someone to support you around that. Look for resources, whether they are, coaches or therapists or colleagues or friends or trusted friends. What you don't want to do, though, is poll the whole world. What should I do? That's not going to help you. But you do want to talk to one or two key trusted mentors, colleagues, coaches, things like that.
Yeah, if you ask too many people, you'll get so many opinions that you'll be more confused than when you started.
Yes,
but there are
absolutely. And I will tell you that I find that most people will give advice, unless they're a trained professional like you and I are. They will give advice based on what they would do and their own level of fear. So they are like, oh, you can't do that. I mean, when I went to go quit my job, I had a trusted colleague who was very successful, was like, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I had to fight so hard to hold on to my own truth. And that was because that was something he would never do. And looking back, it was not easy, but I've never for 1 second regretted it. Not for 1 second.
Well, yeah, people have we see things as they are, not as, as we are, not as they are. And
Exactly.
So it's through our own filter. And a lot of times, yeah, people project. This is a little side tangent, but you talked about being a trained professional. I think that's where it's so important. The role of a coach is to me, it's a huge responsibility, because it's not just about opening up somebody, like emotionally or even mentally, giving them some ideas and possibilities. It's kind of like, if you're going to take them through the valley, you've got to be able to take them to the other side. And can you do that? So you're not just opening them up, you're actually opening them up, taking out the pain, the bullet wound, if you will, and sealing them back up again so that they're healthy and stronger than before. And that's really, it's a testament also to what you're doing, because having somebody who has perspective on it, who has been through this a lot, who has seen it from different angles, will be able to bring in that outside perspective and that more seasoned perspective, where sometimes we're so close to it that we can't see the forest, the trees kind of thing. And so, yeah.
In fact, I'll tell you, Nicole, I have more people who come to me because they know I've done it myself, and I'm on the other side of the street, having sort of walked over fire and glass and all kinds of obstacles, going, come over here. I survived, I made it, and I can show you how, and I can walk by your side. And not that they would do it just like I would do it, but I find that my relationships with my clients are really partnerships. Like, I walk with them right along the way, and I share with them, things I've learned, things I've observed, things that I experienced, mistakes I made that I learned the hard way, and hopefully I can give them some shortcuts and share that. But one of the things I love about coaching too is that it assumes that the individual knows what's right for them, even if they can't access it. So what my job really is, in addition to some of the things you said, is pulling their truth out of them, things that they're either ignoring, because most of us swat away our greatest, most natural gifts. We think, oh, everybody has that gift, but it's not true. That talent, everybody can do that, but it isn't true. And we don't notice the ways in which we have strengths and have abilities that we're, either because of assumptions or fears, or maybe even conditioning from our young life, we put aside, like, we can't do that because what would so and so think, and so to me, that's the fun of being a coach. The satisfaction, the journey is really the deep partnership that I have with people. I mean, I'm basically the coach now that I desperately needed 16 years ago. I mean, desperately, and it didn't exist. And so, yeah, it's not an easy journey to do by yourself. And especially if you have a lot of people around you who are talking you out of it, whether it's a partner, a spouse, a parent, a colleague, a friend, because they're afraid for you. They love you. It's not a question of they want you not to be happy. They love you. They care about you, but they have some of their own concerns and fears, many of which sometimes are financial. I don't know. Some people may not have picked up on this. I'm a money breakthrough coach as well. I went back to get that certification after I got my other two certifications after about 4 years of coaching, Because what I realized was many people, when they are trying to make career change, they're bumping up against their money assumptions, money fears, their old family money legacy, I call it. And our net worth is directly connected to our self-worth. And so sometimes what we're actually doing when we're talking about negotiating with money is working on our self-worth, working on our belief in ourselves and actually valuing ourselves. Because when we don't speak up, this is part of what gets in our way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think this ties into this next question that I want to talk about, which is entrepreneurship. Because you mentioned, actually, by the way, little shout out. I read a book that is just awesome. It's called The Soul of Money. And it talks about this connection, what you're talking about, and breaking through some of these blocks that we have around money. And, but so I wanted to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship in this context too, because when we think about entrepreneurship, sometimes people think about it as being this big, scary thing, right? It's a risky thing. And, for years I've talked about this and saying, well, is it risky? Is it truly risky to be an entrepreneur where you might have 10 clients or 100 clients? You lose one and you lose a percentage of your income. You have a job and your 100% of your income is wrapped up in that job. If you lose that job, you lose 100%, which is more risky, right? But that's just a reframe on that. And I'm not saying that every single person has to leave their job and go work for themselves. Obviously, there are entrepreneurs, and then there are intrapreneurs that take that creative energy and the innovation, and they work through within an organization and within a structure, a team. So can you talk a little bit about the qualities? Because I'm sure you come across those that are looking for a career change, going from one job to the next. There are some that are looking to go out and have their own and start their own business, whether it's consulting or whatever. And so what are some of the qualities for somebody who's listening to know which is the best path for them, or what to take into consideration if they're going to go out on their own as an entrepreneur, and maybe they, like you did, working for someone else, and eventually now you're working for yourself. There's a big difference there.
Yeah, and let me address one thing you said first. A lot of people think being an entrepreneur is the riskiest. And I have to tell you, I mean, I've had my business here through, the period of the pandemic style recession, through the one before that. I have never felt more secure in my livelihood than working for myself. And I think this is one of the qualities that's required to be an entrepreneur. I often will ask people, well, what's the number one reason you want to be an entrepreneur? And if the first thing they say is, well, I don't want to have a boss, that isn't a good reason to be an entrepreneur. Because what I will tell you is you will have a boss, and it's called yourself. And I've seen many entrepreneurs turn themselves into the worst boss they've ever could have possibly had. I help those people too. But the point is really that you want to know that you can trust yourself. You can trust yourself to make decisions even when you don't have all the answers. You will trust that even if you don't have all the answers, you will figure out the answers either by being willing to ask for help, to find resources, to be resourceful, and to try again. Like if plan A doesn't work, you go for plan B. If plan B doesn't work, then go for plan C. If you are a creative thinker, and this is not the same as an artist, when I say creative thinker, what I mean is a really, really strong creative problem solver. Someone who literally can solve anything. And while they're thinking about solving problems, they have the plan one, but they also have 4 backup plans. If you're someone who thinks like that, that is very much of an entrepreneurial thinker, the way that I see it. And those are the same people that tend to get frustrated in corporate positions where they're told this is how you do it. Because they actually, the minute they hear something that's going to be done, a project, a task, a goal, a result you want to create, they think of 10 things you could do to get to that result. And it's very stifling for someone to be said, okay, this is only one way you can go. And so if that's you, if you're frustrated by that, you're probably more of an entrepreneur. And if you're someone who can trust yourself fully and is willing to try things and experiment. I think it's almost like it's almost a little bit like being a scientist. It sounds strange, you don't have the technical aspect of chemistry unless that's your business, but it really is kind of being a scientist, like having a hypothesis about something, being willing to try something, but no, it may work or it may not. And then you have to kind of test and tweak in the field and see what works and what works for you as well. I call this the entrepreneurial bone. I believe that we all either have the entrepreneurial bone or we don't. And it's not good nor bad. It's just that it's important to know what's our truth. I call it a bone because it's like a bone we're born with. Like my parents would tease me that, like, when I was young, I never played dress up or like wedding, a little girl dressing up in a wedding dress and planning a wedding. What I would do is line up all my stuffed animals and I would teach a workshop to them all on chairs. Like, that was a clue. I was doing that at 5 years old. I used to do puzzles. I would do those little block puzzles and I would dump 10 of them together, not just do one at a time. I would do 10 of them together and I would love solving all those pieces. So I share those personal stories because everyone who's listening has stories like that. They can look back. We have clues in our life, like if you were someone who like wanted to have a lemonade stand and like earn money for the neighbor down the street who was sick and you wanted to buy her groceries. I hear kids doing this a lot during the pandemic. If that was something that you thought of and that you wanted to do that was fun, or you see your own kids doing that, that's a little piece of that entrepreneurial bone. And when I say take an x-ray, what that really means is like look through all the other stuff, to take off the other things and look through and see, is that really who you are? Because if you're not an entrepreneur in terms of that bone, but you start an entrepreneurial business because you don't want to have a boss, you will probably not be happy in your business. There's something about the structure and the aspect of it that doesn't fit for you. Now, if you do have the entrepreneurial bone and you actually don't want to start a business, that's perfectly fine. Like you said, Nicole, you can be an entrepreneur working within a bigger business. I actually work with a lot of clients like this, people in the real estate business. They're associated with a bigger company, and yet they're really running their own business. This is true for a lot of different sales positions or consulting type positions in technology and things like this, where you're going out and you're being a trainer, but you're also building some of your own business. So it's important to know what really lights you up, to know that. And if you're someone who's willing to reach, I don't even feel like it's risk. It's more like reach into the unknown. I think of it as being kind of a swashbuckler in the jungle. If you like the path that's like a well-worn path, you like a trail that's laid out and you like to follow the trail and feel comfortable doing it, know what the next steps are and which way to turn, that is great. That makes you more of a specialist. And that probably has you better suited for an employee situation in some kind of corporate entity. If you're someone who like is faced with the jungle in front of you, you have no idea how to get to the other side, if there's water there or someone who's going to be there waiting for you or what, and you're willing to kind of like use your machete and like create your own path, even if it's with a coach by your side, and that is fun to you, that's a quality of having an entrepreneurial bone. So one more I'll mention, there's so many I could go on. I'll just mention one more that I think is really important, is that to be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to be someone who's going to grow yourself, because your business can only grow as much as you're willing to grow. And so that's something worth writing down for the listeners. If you're what I call a secret entrepreneur, someone who is in a corporate job right now and they're thinking about being an entrepreneur, they have an itch for that, you have to be willing to really grow yourself. And that includes in all kinds of different ways. If you're not a voracious learner, you're also probably not an entrepreneur. One of the things that I see in successful entrepreneurs is like, and I'm like this, I can't stop taking classes. I can't stop reading books. I can't stop listening to webinars and telesummits. And like, it's almost a little bit of an addiction, like this desire to just gather information and new perspectives. That's another quality of an entrepreneur as well.
Well, I love that. And Barb, thank you for unpacking that for us, because I think that there's a lot of people who wonder, and the self-doubt comes in. Can I do it? Can I really be an entrepreneur? this is whatever, but it's really more so because everybody has told them this is the way to do it, right? Get a good education, get a good job, create security, and so forth. Whereas deep down inside, they're there and they're like, I really don't feel like this is actually where I'm supposed to be, but this is where I feel like everybody else thinks I should be. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're torn between those two. And then once you get aligned, as you know, as a coach, you get aligned with who you really are, it's like the world opens up to you and you're far more happier and more effective in whatever it is that you end up doing. And so it's just really owning. And you mentioned earlier about strengths. I'm a big believer in playing to your strengths, and it's really knowing your strengths. Again, it comes back to the beginning when you talked about self-awareness. When you know yourself and you know who you are and who you're not, then you can make really good quality decisions. The problem is that sometimes we're so close to it. It's so innate. Some of those strengths and those natural ways of being are so innate for us that we actually can't even see them in ourselves because we take it for granted. Doesn't everybody do this? Doesn't
Yes.
everybody think like this? It's like, no, they actually don't. I remember myself thinking, well, everybody does this. This is simple, right? Like I was always super organized and very efficient. I've always been very efficient in getting things done ever since I was little. And you talked about lining up your dolls, and doing a workshop to them. I was reorganizing my room and I thought, oh, I'm going to be an interior decorator. And then realized very quickly that was not what I was going to be doing because I don't want to decorate people's houses. But I've got a certain way. It was really the efficiency of it, because once I got it into the optimal state, the optimal, I'm talking moving furniture at 6, 7 years old,
Wow.
moving it around. And so I was like, nope, this is optimal. And then I didn't need to move it again until we moved to another home. And then I did it again. But every time we moved, I got better at it. And so it got to the point where I could move into a place and I could in one shot know exactly where the best places. But again, that's that strength. Now, for me, I look at it and it's like, well, everybody has that, right? That was what I was thinking. Everybody has that. And then you go and you realize, you go into people's houses in that particular example and you realize, or people's offices and you realize apparently they don't. So that is something. But until you recognize that, you take it for granted oftentimes. And so I think it's really important to have a coach like yourself. This thing just doesn't want to stay in my ear today. Somebody like yourself who can guide you through this process. Now, with that, as we wrap up here, you have a gift for our listeners, and maybe that's a good time. This is a good time to talk about that, and as a good next step for people that are listening who want to get more of an experience of working with you and some of the material you have.
Yeah, so the gift is if your listeners go to Monday Morning Leap, LEAP.com, and what you will get every Monday in your inbox is a very, very quick little soundbite nugget of career wisdom. It's actually the answers to the most frequently asked career questions. And many of them are about transitioning from a corporate position into entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs who are just beginning. It's really across the spectrum. And the idea behind these is really they just take a couple of minutes, but they will give you a nugget and something tangible to practice and to think about that will really transform your whole week. And within that, you'll also be offered the invitation to do a career burnout quiz. And you can also find that on my website, internalgroove.com, if you're interested in really finding out how burnt out you are and what the next steps might be for that. Because really today, Nicole, we could really only scratch the surface of really what's possible around that. And I think the first step there is to just recognize, you know what, you're ready for change. It doesn't have to be a big grand announcement. You can just in your heart say to yourself, I'm ready for change, and I'm going to be open to discovering what that might be. And it can be gentle. It doesn't have to be a big, huge, scary thing. It can be really stepping on stepping stones, like over 3 inches of grass to the next stepping stone. Just one little step to explore something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you. I appreciate that gift. Actually, let me just put it up on the screen one more time here is go to mondaymorningleap.com and get your free gift from Barb. And what's great about that is it's not just a one and done. It's every Monday you're going to be giving them some fresh insight and some of the questions that they have. So that is awesome. We just really appreciate you having you here, Barb, and sharing. And like you said, we could only like scratch the surface on this, and that's why I encourage everyone to go to also your website, internalgroove.com, learn more about what Barb is doing. And we just thank you for, again, Barb, for being here. We thank our listeners and our viewers for being here. You're the reason why we do this podcast. And I believe that leaders of transformation take action. And so, take action on something. If this has kind of been resonating with you and you're like, I've been thinking about doing something, but I'm not sure what. And I'm not sure what that looks like, whether it is staying, because you got some options, right? Whether it's staying in your current career and your current even role and changing your perspective on how you're approaching it, whether it is working with your boss and seeing what else you can do to make, change the dynamics, whether it's looking for a new role within the same company, whether it's leaving and going to another company, whether it is leaving and starting your own business. There's lots of options here. And so, but if it is something that's kind of you feeling unsettled, you're feeling like so many are right now as being in transition, then I highly encourage you to go check out what Barb is doing and take action on this. Don't put it off, because it's not going to get any more comfortable. You can put it off. You can say, I hear so often people say, oh, well, I'm retiring in 5 years. I'm just going to wait it out. Well, you know what? That's 5 years of your life. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of opportunity for you to make a greater impact in your own life and also be an example. If you have children, you have people looking up to you, nieces, nephews, whatever, looking up to you, and that you can make such a great impact during that time. So don't settle. Bottom line, don't settle for good enough. Go out there and find out, what is going to light you up, what is going to cause you to feel fully alive in your life so that you can be everything that you're capable of being. We'd love to hear your stories. You can, of course, go to our website, which is leadersoftransformation.com. You can find me through that, connect with me. I mentioned earlier, you can schedule a consult with me as well if you're a leader looking to take things to the next level. There's a lot of opportunities to connect with us. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of that. But we'd love to hear your stories. We'd love to hear how this is impacting you. And if you have questions, pass them along. Of course, you can also reach out to Barb directly, but, do something with this material. When you hear a podcast, it's great to hear it and be inspired. And oftentimes we go on with the rest of our day and sometimes we forget and we put it off, but don't put it off today. Do something today. That's my call to action for you, is do something with what you heard today. And, even if that is simply a small little step of going to Monday Morning Leap and getting your free gift from Barb and getting signed up on her Monday newsletter that she sends out. Okay. So with that, again, Barb, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our listeners, and join us next week as we have another amazing guest who is going to be joining us next Tuesday. And so you can join us. It's going to be, it's going to be Jen Griggs, and she is going to be talking about redefining capitalism through employee ownership. So join us. We're going to have a lot of fun. And until then, have a great week. We'll look forward to seeing you soon.